In this video, we'll look at how to use the adjustment layer gradient map and the effects layer gradient overlay to produce some varied results in photo editing. Copy the background. First thing I'll look at is gradient mapping. Go ahead and click that. The dialog box pops up, and first thing you'll do is double click on this bar here. Mine is just one color because I had been doing some editing previously, but if you have never done this before, it will go black to white. Just go ahead and double click on it. You'll have a different box here than I do because, like I said, I was working with this function previously. It's one of my favorites. But regardless of what you have here, go ahead and click this little gear at the top right corner of your preset box, and you will notice that there's a bunch of different gradients that you can choose from that Photoshop has already created for you. I'm in the photographic toning one. If you want to click that, you can, or you can go ahead and take some time to explore the other ones that are here. If you'd like to make your own gradient, you can do that. First, you can manipulate a gradient that already exists in Photoshop if you want to. So let's say I like golden selenium, but I want this color here. Double click to be a little bit closer to white. I could say OK, and then I've just edited that gradient. I can load and save these onto my swatches panel if I would like to as well. I can also click and drag these stops off to get rid of them, or just go ahead and click anywhere I would like to create a stop, double click, and then you can choose a custom color there, like 2. These little white triangles in between the stops give you a little bit more room to adjust just where a color fades into another color. Or you can start from square one if you'd like to. You get the picture with editing the gradients. I'm going to choose a preset gradient, maybe. What would I like to do? Let's try this one. Say I don't like that, bring this down, and then you can see my photograph changing, with how I'm editing my gradient. And know that this isn't your only option. This is really far from your only option. The more you play around with the gradient mapping or the gradient adjustment layer tool, the more comfortable you'll get with it. For now, I'm going to say OK. If I ever want to go back and edit it, I can just double click here. This pops up. I can click on my gradient to do some more edits. I can also say I can reverse the colors. But in my opinion, where the magic really happens here is using your blending modes and just seeing what those do in conjunction with your opacity. So let's say I think that's a little bit intense. I can drop it just a little bit, and this has a different effect than if I just had my original photo. So you can keep moving through these. I was on darken, kind of looking. If you think any of them are a little bit too intense, like I said, you can always play with the opacity, or you can add multiple adjustment layers on top of this too. So I really like soft light so far. I'm just going to go through these and then choose soft light. I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little bit. Again, if I want to get rid of the effects in some areas, so I like it, let's say I like it over here a lot, but I don't necessarily like what it's doing here, I can click on my background copy. I can make a selection. I'm just going to select this part of the windmill here, and then I'll go up to my gradient map, my layer mask, and then with this selected, I know that Photoshop won't let me paint outside of this, so I can be a little bit looser with my brush strokes. I can bring my opacity up, and I can take that effect off of certain areas. Let's say I wanted to do it in the sky, I could go back down to the background copy layer. You might be wondering, well, why can't I just do it on this layer mask here? and you'll have a hard time selecting because the visual information that's stored in here, all of the different colored pixels that trigger the selection tools to work, are not on this layer right here, but they're on this one here. So we need to briefly go back down to our background copy layer. We just want to make sure that we don't stay there. So I'm just going to do a really poor job of selecting this very quickly. You would, of course, take some more time because you have it. And then I would move back up here with my brush and then start painting this away. And this particular gradient map did not do that much to the sky, so that's why you're not seeing a huge change, but there is a little bit of one, and then you can see it pop up on the layer mask. So, again, I could just, sky's the limit here, and say just try different ones out, and then from there go ahead and see what it does. And that's a nice color combo to your images. So it definitely takes some getting used to really kind of understand, but once you do, you'll notice, I think, a lot if you look at professionally taken photos or professionally edited photos, the use of the gradient mapping tool. You can also, like I said, add other adjustment layers that you've learned more about in previous videos on top of the gradient map layer, you know, because it does change things like values and brightness and all that. So I can add maybe a curves layer on top of this here and bring out my highlights just a little bit more. Maybe I want to take my levels and then bring some darkness out of that photograph, either by using this bar or this bar right here. I could do so. So that's gradient maps in a nutshell. Definitely, when you're using them, utilize the blending modes. I'm going to delete these to show you something else that you can do. Now the FX button down here is a little bit different. It needs a layer, an existing layer, to function. You can put it on the background copy layer, or you can also try to put it on different adjustment layers if you have those going on. I'll click FX and choose Gradient Overlay. You'll notice a little bit different effect with this, although you're using the gradient bar and editing the gradient bar just like you did within the gradient maps. You also have the same presets, so if you'd like to choose anything else, you can do that. Maybe I would want to look at color harmonies. So I see secondary colors, primary colors. I'll check color harmonies too, complementary colors. Maybe find something that you think would go well with your photograph. And here I'm just going to drop the opacity a little bit. Oops, I have to say okay. My computer has to not freeze. I'm just going to drop the opacity a little bit to be able to see what this is going to look like. I can change the angle. Let's say I want the yellow in the top left corner. There we go. I can change the scale to bring it up, to make it larger, and I can click and drag this over if I want to. If I don't like that yellow, let's say, you know, I'd like to choose something else, I could double click here and go ahead and make that change. So now we have something a little bit different. Let's say I want a blue that's a little bit deeper. Okay, okay. So you have the ability to change this just like you did with the gradient map. I'm going to bring my opacity up a little bit more, and I'll say OK because I want to run it through a blending mode. You could just leave it there really lightly too. It's up to you. So bring it up, say OK. And then I have effects here, gradient overlay, so I can always turn these off if I want to see what my photograph looks like without this change. I can always double click on gradient overlay to be able to move this around and to play with it a little bit more. Double click, good, okay. And then now I can play with different blending modes with my gradient overlay if I want to, and then make some adjustments based on those. I'm just scrolling through with my arrow keys here. So possibly I didn't like that one. If you go back, you could always change it. And go back to photographic toning. So you want to be able to see your image from the beginning. So there we go. Scroll down, look through this a little bit more, and then decide upon one that I like. Make it a little bit bigger so it covers the whole thing here. I'm just going to bring down the opacity a little bit. I can play with my blend modes here actually, which give your gradients a different effect than if you play with the blend modes here. Ooh. So after going through these, you can see you get a variety of effects. I'll go back to one that I liked. I think I like Vivid Light. I'll say OK. Now always double click to edit that. Play with the blending modes here. And then this is a fun way to add different colors on top of or over your photograph. You can also do similar things with the pattern overlay, so I'll quickly go over that. If I want, artists use this a lot to give their image kind of a perceived texture, so to make it look like it's printed on a substance that it's not. Anytime you see one of those gearboxes or gears, it indicates that there is a lot of choices behind it. So go ahead and click that. Maybe I'll say artist brushes canvas. I could choose different types of canvas here. You can always make the scale larger. So let's say I want this to look like it's printed on canvas. Here, I can play with the blending modes once again. Don't really like anything like that. I can bring down the opacity. Thought it was a little bit too intense. That one looks okay. So kind of texturize the paper, or you can go for a little bit more bold patterns. Maybe I want to do rocks. I don't know why I would, but I could. Finally, if I didn't like the gradient overlay or the pattern overlay, I could always uncheck the eyeball right here to see what my image looked like before. Let's say I like the gradient overlay but not the pattern overlay. And finally, just like any other adjustment, you can add adjustments on top of your gradient layers to create your own desired look.